Welcome to Startup Happy Hour. We used to do this in person, as you can see from these wonderful, fun photos. And maybe in the fall, we'll get back to that. But during the pandemic, we've moved to a Zoom format, and our participation is usually pretty good. And we can still, get together in some way, which is better than not getting together at all. So these events are brought to you by StartupSac and the Carlsen Center. A little bit about StartupSac. We're a nonprofit that whose mission is to accelerate Sacramento startup and innovation ecosystem. Invite you to visit our website at startupsac.com. Lots of resources for entrepreneurs in our region there, including our semi-famous ecosystem map, but also we have blog posts a couple a week that will bring you up to date on everything that's happening in Sacramento for startup founders. And then I'd like to invite Cameron to introduce the Carlsen Center.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Laura, again, for continuing to partner on Startup Happy Hour. We're excited to work with StartupSac. My name is Cameron Law, and I serve as the Executive Director here at the Carlsen Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I'm joined by one of our team members, Arlene Miranda, who heads up our operations and our marketing efforts. And we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to start and scale their ventures. So feel free to check us out. We're not just for students, we're for the broader community, and looking forward to engaging you in the future. So back to you, Laura.
So as a nonprofit, StartupSac is primarily supported through sponsorship of local businesses. And those businesses include SMUD, Witten Law, Bender Insurance Solutions, Stoll Reeves, Weintraub Tobin, Moneta Ventures, who has a new logo, check it out, Holcomb Law Group, Clifton Larson Allen, Digitally Driven, and Ernst & Young. So I am, going to show you a short video right now from SMUD.
At SMUD, we're committed to zero carbon by 2030. We're creating more energy from renewable resources, reconfiguring our power plants to improve air quality, electrifying our fleet, greening our buildings, and accelerating clean energy with our first grid-scale battery farm. The Clean Power City movement is happening. For 37 ways you can join the charge, visit cleanpowercity.org.
So, welcome. We're here now we're to the part now that you really came for, to learn about EV Life and Eyerate from their co-founders, Kevin Favro and Ray Weisberg. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over, stop sharing my screen, and hand it over to Cameron, who is going to be our talk show host.
Very good, very good. Well, I'm going to spotlight our group here. So we got Ray, and let me find Kevin amongst the sea of other. There you are. Thank you for the hand gestures to attract the eyes. And then, sorry, but I will have to add myself as well. So apologies, you'll have to look at me for the duration of this as well. But really excited to have these two co-founders here today to share their story. It's my pleasure to introduce and interview our Startup Happy Hour guests. We have Ray Weisberg, from the co-founder and CEO of Eyerate, and Kevin Favro, the co-founder and co-CEO of EV Life. For those of you that don't know, Eyerate began in 2019 with co-founders Michael and Mitchell Arenado's garage with the assistance from Mike Pieri and Ray Weisberg, who's here today with us. All four of them worked low-wage jobs from restaurants to car washes. And today now Eyerate is creating a new category of business that helps employees earn more for high performance. Eyerate is backed by the city of Elk Grove, Jason Calacanis Launch, and Mucker Capital. And then we could add maybe now the Growth Factory to that list, which is exciting. And then we have for EV Life, EV Life was founded in 2019 with the mission to connect people with opportunities to build safer and more sustainable world. The company's first product is a web platform that makes it easier to find and finance electric cars. EV Life does this through a user-friendly interface that brings together car shopping tools, charging and range calculators, and an EV climate loan that saves drivers up to $200 per month. And so really excited to speak with these two entrepreneurs. And one of the things that I think will be really key to pull out of this is one, just the power of the pivot. They both have had really great pivot stories as they've built their ventures, and then also just their ability to tap into the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem to continue to grow their ventures. And just it's been fun to follow both these companies in their continued growth. And so just in kicking us off, I would love to hop into the main portion of the conversation, but would love to kind of learn a little bit more about the founding stories of both of your ventures and kind of that experience of being in and around the startup. And so I would love if you could both share with us a bit about your background and what led you to co-founding these startups, and what was that initial startup experience like? And so we'll kick off with Ray, and then we'll go to Kevin. So kick us off, Ray, and sharing a little bit about your founding experience.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Cameron. Really excited to be here. I mean, it started off with my co-founders. I've known these guys for 20 years, and you mentioned it. We grew up working in restaurants, clothing stores, car washes. So we were low-wage service employees. We went to school, got great jobs in sales, and we sold everything from payroll to med device. And then my co-founder, Michael, and I, we reconnected at a Sequoia-backed startup called Nimble RX. And while we were there, we kind of, learned what it took to run a startup, saw how it operated. And the whole time we were there, we were planning on running a business. Nimble went through a pivot, and we basically repurposed a product that they had for the first version of Eyerate and put it into the market really, really quickly in 2019. And we saw customers willing to pay for it. We were getting good feedback. So 4 months into putting the MVP in the market, we decided to quit our high-paying jobs, move back to Sacramento to our parents' house, and just grind it out. Luckily, we got into Launch Accelerator at the end of 2019, and then we made small pivots throughout the journey to get where we're at today. So really excited to be here and share more.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ray, for sharing that kind of initial founding journey. It seems like there was a lot of connections with all the co-founders from an early stage, and then, the right opportunity presented itself to utilize something that kind of was in existence and find that new market adoption with it. And then certainly taking the risk to, leave the job and go back and live with the parents and live the startup life. And want to hear from Kevin, and then would love to go back to kind of what it was like to make that shift and kind of the the mindset that you had when you went to do that. But Kevin, would love to hear about kind of the founding journey of EV Life and that kind of initial getting started aspect.
Yeah, I am off mute. Okay. I did a lot of random things in my early career right out of college. I settled into, the bulk of my career has been in software development. I fell in love with code when I was first exposed to it when I was volunteering in Nepal. I was living out there and was friends with the computer teachers and was blown away the first time I saw HTML, because I had a recording arts background from college. I was in film and music, nothing to do with code. And then it was incredible when I stumbled upon it. So I worked here. My first professional job was right here in Folsom, actually, with a company called Serious Magic. I don't know if anybody's heard of that. They sold to Adobe right after, about a year after I started, and I found my way into a full-time hire from that acquisition. So I got started off in a great spot working for Adobe, and then I switched over to startups because I found like I wanted to wear more hats than just what a big corporation wants you to wear, the one hat that they want you to wear. And so startups really afforded me that opportunity. And I learned about startups. I learned about just the fact that nobody knows what they're doing when they're first starting out, and a startup is seeking a validation of their business model. And And because of that, it's exciting, it's fun, it's fast paced, and you get to rely on a lot of your different skill sets. And so I pushed through my career in software development, but at some point it stopped being as satisfying. I knew I needed something else, and I wanted to flex other muscles that I had. And so I kind of just waited. I've always been entrepreneurial, little things here and there. And I've always kept good networks, personal networks, and I'm just waiting for the right time to do something. And right after I had left a job, one of the coworkers here in Sacramento contacted me about a startup weekend competition in Folsom in 2019. And so we got together, three of us engineers got together, and I quickly realized that 3 engineers shouldn't start a company together. And I reached out to an old friend of mine from college who had recently moved into the Bay Area, and we had recently connected. And he joined our team, and we ended up winning first place at the startup weekend. And that I was at the right time in my life. I was seeking a new situation. I was seeking something outside of just engineering and raw coding. And that was the opportunity. That was the catalyst that made us all want to jump 2 feet into it.
I love it. Some great stuff there. So one, just hearing the longing for some of the wanting to wear more hats, right? Some of that like entrepreneurial drive of just, being a problem solver and really looking at the business from a variety of aspects kind of seemed like that was a core part of your founding journey, and just being in and around startups and finding yourself in that space. And I love the point you made on networks. It definitely builds confidence in jumping into a venture, or as you're getting started, to be able to know you can tap into a network, whether that be for, resources like this, like StartupSac or events like this. One obviously led you to Startup Weekend, which is what an exciting launch from there. For those of you that don't know about Startup Weekend, it's a three-day event starting on Friday and runs through Sunday, basically 54 hours of taking your idea and building it into a business. And I do have to say, not many companies exist after the Startup Weekend itself. And so it's really exciting to see that with you and EV Life. And I know you've continued to grow and add new offerings since that time. So thanks for sharing that. So I think one thing I want to pull from both of you was there was this element of a mindset that was kind of taking that risk, or being attracted to the risk, and adding kind of these additional hats. So would love, Ray, if you could kind of go back to that time of when you and your team made that decision to say, hey, let's actually start this, and make that decision to move back home. What did that look like? And what were some of the cost benefit analysis that you went through with your team? And how did you actually manage that as an entrepreneur and co-founder?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And for us, we always had this mindset where we were going to manifest our own destiny. Like, we knew we were going to be successful, and we knew if we just pushed at it long enough and made small pivots, we'd be able to break through. And we did that throughout the journey. It's tough, especially when you go from making an income to no income, and you have family and friends and people telling you no constantly. But it was just a mindset that we knew we were going to manifest our destiny. We knew we were going to build something truly amazing for the community that we lived in. And for us, we were these low-wage service employees. And if we could build a product that solved for our own problem at the time by helping service employees earn more money, we knew we'd have the tenacity to do it for 5, 10, 15 years until we built a very large sustainable business. The early days are tough, but once you get some traction and can build some revenue and possibly get investments, if that's the path that you want to go down, it's an incredibly fun and rewarding journey.
Thanks for sharing that, Ray. For you, Kevin, have you always had an interest in kind of the electric vehicle space, or kind of around climate, or was that just an idea? Is that an idea that just came from the Startup Weekend, or how did that kind of process come as you're like thinking through it and trying to identify that problem? I'm kind of pulling from where Ray had that experience of being in that kind of sales position, or in, kind of as you sharing some of those low wage jobs where there was an opportunity that he saw to create additional wealth for some of those individuals. Is that something that you had experience with prior, or how did that come to fruition?
I think the short answer is no. If you were to look at my resume, I don't have a track record of being involved in climate from a business perspective. Of course, I'm concerned. I believe in climate change, the climate crisis. I want to do something about it. Back in 2016, my wife and I were on vacation, and I rented a Tesla from Turo. And I remember thinking it was the most insane experience in the world. It was amazing. I felt like I was driving inside of an iPhone. And it really left a profound impact on me. I'm an outdoorsman. I love the outdoors. I want to preserve the outdoors. And so when the team came together, so Startup Weekend, typically you have to work on a fresh idea hasn't been worked on yet. And most people show up to a Startup Weekend and build their team there. But we were a bunch of late 30, early 40 dads that don't have a lot of 54 hours time windows to just give to a program. And so we actually formed our team about 2 months beforehand, and we met once a week. We didn't work on anything, but we ideated, and we had a Google Doc of about 16 to 18 ideas. And every week we'd add more, we'd debate, we'd figure it out. And we kind of settled in on this notion that we wanted to use data to positively influence customer behavior. That was kind of our mission statement. And so then we started ranking all of our ideas based off of that mission statement. And I don't know how EVs, I really don't remember how EVs got brought up, but we decided that we wanted to help people electrify. And then we started looking into the problems that people are having with electrification. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, no, awesome.
Okay.
No, very good. Yeah, it was some of the ideation, and obviously there was ties to your personal life, but nonetheless, it seemed like it came to fruition at the right stage for one, just Startup Weekend, and then also just where you were in life as well to get started. So I want to kind of move away from maybe just you both as co-founders, but would love for you both to share a little bit at a higher level of what Eyerate is and what EV Life is. I read kind of the value proposition at a high level, but would love for you to share a little bit more about the companies and where you started. And then you both have had a unique kind of pivot in your business, both either adding new offerings that have really kind of found product market fit, or just kind of totally shifted in general. So would love to start with you, Kevin, and share a little bit about EV Life and what that growth from Startup Weekend, pretty fresh idea outside of some brainstorming sessions before, to then where you are today.
Yeah, so the Startup Weekend was amazing. I'd recommend it for anybody who is in that space and has that time to give and wants to be really challenged. It does really provide a startup in a weekend, like the feeling. It's intense, and you have mentors and you have pivots. We had pivots inside the weekend, and it was scary, it was exhilarating, and it was exciting. It was everything, and everything that a startup is. And so the idea that we ended up landing on, I mean, we were very naive, right? We had just started researching this at the event, and the idea that we landed on was to help people overcome range anxiety. So at the time, EVs, the range wasn't quite there. A lot of EVs on the market were sub 100 miles, and people were nervous, rightly so, about breaking down and not having the battery range that they needed to get along in their life. And so we had this concept where we build a mobile app, and you put the mobile app in your pocket and drive around your day, and then we would layer data on top of your drive and tell you what your drive and what your day would have been like had you been in an electric vehicle. Would you have broken down? How far were you from the nearest charger? At what point would you have had to charge? So the concept was to test drive an EV in the comfort of your own car. And that's we got the recognition for that idea. And then I think literally the next day after, I mean, I was pumped. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and this is where I was going to set my sights. We literally found a company that was already doing that. And that didn't come up in our Google searches at the weekend. And so I called them, I reached out to them, found out that they were kind of struggling with that idea. There really wasn't a clear business model. And so we just kept talking, we kept meeting with people, and we were kind of losing momentum as well. And so we also knew that incentives were really confusing. EVs are expensive, and incentives are out there, but they're very difficult for customers to understand. And my co-founder, Peter, and I had a weekend where we went shopping apart, and we came back with wildly different information. And we realized that if we were having a problem with this 3-4 months into it, that everybody else was going to have the same problem. So we decided to focus on affordability as the number one, which it turns out is the number one barrier to EV adoption. And so we built our first, MVP of our incentives engine, and so it's not really a pivot. That was the first pivot, and now it's not so much of a pivot, but we see we are working on a vision beyond EVs. And so our vision now is to not only speak about EVs, but also the entire home, which will be electrified at some point. And there will be incentives, and they will be confusing, and they will be issued by the government, which will have really clunky application processes. And those are all the things that we're geared up to help improve and to help sort out for the customer. So now we are thinking beyond EVs and we talk about starting in the driveway as the gateway drug. Start the driveway with the EV, move into the garage, and then the rest of the home.
Love it. Well, I've never heard of EV being the gateway drug, but nonetheless, it's a gateway to a cleaner world. So I like that. That's good stuff. But I think, as I'm listening to you, one of the things was just they might not have been huge pivots, but the intentionality to kind of do that customer discovery process, whether that was actually talking to customers or also going and kind of experiencing it yourself and coming back with that real world data to inform where you're going to go next versus kind of just pulling from thin air and making assumptions as you're building. And so that kind of shift from really starting out as tackling the main problem of range anxiety, which was kind of the first problem you were focusing on, to which then became incentives based on that customer discovery process. And so just wanted to reiterate that for people that are getting started, was really to go through that process and be listening to what your customers and what the market's really saying, and how that can shift the way that you build the solution that you're trying to create, right? Instead of them going and building a full mobile app around this test driving, they created a whole different offering, which now they've gained traction and continue to grow. So thanks for sharing that, Kevin, about the journey. Now to you, Ray, in Eyerate. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your kind of, that's what Eyerate does and what that kind of pivots you might have experienced as you've been growing.
Yeah, so at a high level, Eyerate's a customer communication platform that has customers rate service employees in real time and then mention those employees in online reviews or social media content. And then those employees earn cash each time that they get mentioned. So we work with 2,000 businesses currently, from Massage Envy, European Wax Center, now the cannabis industry, and have helped employees earn almost $700K in a little under 3 years. But it didn't start out like that. Like, we came up with this idea when my co-founder Michael and I were working at NimbleRx. NimbleRx was a same-day delivery pharmacy. So we're scaling sales teams across the country to put iPads in doctors' offices where patients could schedule their delivery right from the iPad. Nimble went through a pivot. They laid off all of our sales teams and they left behind all of these iPads. So we took our first iteration of the product, our MVP, and put it back onto these iPads in like Google Forms, where patients could go up and rate their experience at the doctor's office. And these are the iPads that we were putting into the market. And it was a terrible idea. We were going to Menlo Park and buying 40 or 50 iPads at a time, shaping them out. We had charging problems. And what we found was there was no one engaging with them. No one would walk up to the iPad and use it and rate their experience. So we thought about what we would want as employees, and we attached incentives to it. And then we saw the engagement start going up. It was still a terrible idea. We got away from the iPads, and at the end of 2019, we got into Launch Accelerator. We were selling mainly into franchise health and beauty at the time, like Massage Envy, European Wax Center, Amazing Lash. And we get into launch, and COVID hits within a couple months. So we were at 4 or 5K in MRR at the time, and our revenue goes completely to zero. So it's like a near-death moment. All of our partners are shut down. They're literally not doing business. So we had to think about industries that were essential and thriving at the time. And we got really lucky to get into the cannabis industry. And within a little over 2 years, we've closed out 12.5% of the cannabis industry. We built a ton of new products, all geared towards helping employees earn more, integrated with all the top point of sales. So although painful in the moment, it actually helped us grow the business extremely, extremely quickly.
Love it. Well, that's I don't have the saying exactly right, but it's something where, you know, chaos or you know, challenges breed, you know, necessity to create like new ideas or something of that sort. I totally butchered the quote, but basically that forced you to innovate and look at, you know, adjacent customer segments that had the similar problem, right? The issue was still the same, but the customer segment was different. So I love that experience of kind of looking at the overall segments differently in terms of that underlying issue. And kind of similar thing was if you continued to push forward on the iPad, I can only imagine how much more expensive that effort would be, just because you would be making a hardware play in a degree of actually having to buy those iPads and things like that. So little shifts like that can certainly even save you resources in what you're building and how you're deploying it. So love it. Any other elements on the pivot for either of you? If not, we'll move forward on the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem. No? All right, cool. So both of you obviously are located in the greater Sacramento region and founded and built your startups here. Obviously in our marketing materials, we talked about you both winning pitch competitions, which we'll get to, but would love for you to share a little bit about some of the resources that you've tapped into along the journey. You know, we talk a lot about an entrepreneur's success is really that density of a network and support around them to get to where they are, and an ability to tap into those. And so I know just in a call with you, Ray, that you mentioned, you know, coming to StartupSac events and connecting to other founders and things like that. Would love to kind of just have you share what resources and what maybe your perspectives were in going into these events or programs. Sometimes we just show up to check a box, I guess, but you maybe had some intention in your mindset of going to those. And so would love to start with you, Ray, of kind of some of the resources and the mindset around it, and then to you, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, it's been extremely helpful for us. Like our very first event was a Sac startup happy hour at Hot Italian, and Sunny Mayugba was the speaker there. And I think we're at like 1K MRR at this time, maybe 1 or 2 months into our journey. And I remember he gave an inspirational talk. We walk up to him after, made that connection. And then when we were applying for launch, we found out that he went through like one of the first cohorts at launch. So reached out to him and he helped us get into that accelerator. It's extremely, extremely helpful in our journey. So if we never attended that event, we may have never gotten to launch. It was almost like fate. So it was really helpful. And then we did events like 1 Million Cups to go pitch and get feedback and get uncomfortable. The city of Elk Grove has an amazing grant funding platform for startups that are located in the city of Elk Grove. So if you're an Elk Grove startup, reach out to Luis and Daryl. And it's just an amazing platform because they do grant funding and they don't take equity from the startup, and they are extremely helpful in getting us an office space here and connecting us with local businesses. Obviously the Carlsen Center, the Spark Venture Comp, King's Capitalize, which we went through this year, and I think we'll talk about that more later. Growth Factory, which we feel honored to be a part of this year. It's been historically a little hard to raise capital from Sacramento, so they're building an amazing ecosystem, and we're super excited to be a part of it. And then network with founders and try and be helpful to them. And if you are helpful to them, they'll reciprocate it back. It's a really cool ecosystem that's bubbling up here. And then VCs like Moneta as you scale.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks, Ray, for sharing that. What about you, Kevin?
Yeah. So, I started attending Sac startup events back when Starta was around. And then Starta kind of went away, and Sac startup kind of filled the void, and just nonstop programming, nonstop activities. Haven't always been able to take advantage of them, but obviously we owe our business to the Sac startup community for hosting and putting on Startup Weekend in Folsom. And then, Laura's been incredible. Laura's a huge connector. And I guess all the VCs, all the mentors we met at our Startup Weekend competition, we still keep in touch with a good amount of them. Some to actively talk about investments, some for advice and just guidance, and at the very least, seeing them around town, being able to, you know, continue the conversation, and they might have people they want us to talk to. So networking is key around here. It's a very small town. A lot of people know a lot of people. You know, right after we won Startup Weekend, Laura connected us with Thomas Hall from Clean Start. And I saw Gary on here earlier. It looks like he had to drop off, but Gary and Thomas, they were my first meeting after we won Startup Weekend, because Laura said I should meet with Thomas, and so I said, okay, who am I to say I shouldn't? And he's been an incredible resource. Their events that they've thrown, the standard monthly events that they were throwing in person were really helpful. We got to present and kind of, as I like what you said, Ray, about getting uncomfortable, getting in front of people, sharing. I'm embarrassed about what we pitched back then because it's completely different from what we have now, but you got to do it. You got to go through that awkward phase. And yeah, so Clean Start, they also ran the CEO crash course, which was a 4-week, like once a week, every Friday down at UOP. I attended that, and that was really helpful to get me in the right mindset of building a company, which led us to learning about the CalSeed grant from the CEC. Gary was instrumental in helping us apply for that and craft our application and look over that. And we ended up winning that grant as well. So that was huge for us. So yeah, Clean Start's been really great. And yeah, those are Clean Start, I think, is the one that's a little, they fit our niche because they're all about clean energy in the region. So we're a good match for them, and they've been really, really supportive.
Well, thank you both for sharing those examples. Obviously, you tapped on a lot of resources. I think a couple of things that stood out outside of the resources that you shared was, one, just the intention to get uncomfortable and put your idea out into the world. And really, you know, I know certainly as entrepreneurs, that's a really vulnerable place to be in, of like, hey, this is my idea. And Kevin, you shared, like, I can't believe looking back that, you know, whatever we were building, I can't believe we were building what that state of it was, but you couldn't get to this state without, you know, sharing what you're working on to get that feedback and continue to grow. And so just wanted to put a pin in that. And then secondly was just the power of networking, and not the like business card networking, but also really connecting with people and identifying the resources, because a lot of times people know what resource might be best for you at that time, right? And helping you get that connection and opening doors, just as Sunny might have done for you and Eyerate for the Launch Accelerator, and, you know, Clean Start for you, Kevin, and tapping into some of those CalSeed fundings and those opportunities. And so I think to the rest of the entrepreneurs out there is, you know, get uncomfortable and connect to resources in the ecosystem. We're here to support you and help you along that journey. And, you know, these are two great examples of people that have tapped into that ecosystem. And I think one of the things about that too is Sacramento is going to continue to want to lift up its own entrepreneurs and provide that resource and support. So thank you both for sharing that. Go ahead,
real quick, to piggyback on that uncomfortable theme, I think it's the same as with music or any arts, right? And I think David Bowie has a quote about how artists, and I would even say there's an element of art to business and startups as well, but you should always look back and be embarrassed about your prior art, your prior work, because if you're not, you haven't grown. You haven't grown out of that phase. And so it's instinctual to be ashamed of who you were back then, but it's the stepping stone. Those are the stepping stones to where you are today. So, and you'll be embarrassed about where you are now in 5 years.
I love it. Well, that just made me think for both of you, and whoever wants to take it, there's a certain mindset that comes with taking that feedback, right? Is, you know, obviously there's putting your idea out there. How did you both work through kind of, you know, say going to 1 Million Cups and presenting your idea and getting feedback? What's that mindset like, and how did you kind of take in that information and data to help you get to where you are today? Whoever wants to take it, go for it.
I think for us, like on the journey, you're going to get feedback from everybody, and you have to really pick and choose what feedback is important to your journey. Like, you shouldn't listen to everybody. You got to trust your gut a lot. You should hear it. And I think for us, it's the feedback that was most impactful were from entrepreneurs or people that we met with that had done it before, so we could trust that a lot more. And some feedback you have to be okay saying, hey, thank you for that. I disagree, I'm going to move in this direction, but I'll obviously do it in a harmonious way. But there's so much feedback that comes at you so rapidly, so you really have to pick the right pieces of information to move forward on.
Yeah, I think for me, I just recognizing the reality that I am not who I will be in the future, and I have grown from who I was in the past. Like, as long as I feel like I'm showing up with the most accurate information that I have on my product, on my business, on who I am, that's all I can lead with. And to follow up on what Ray said, to give like a concrete example, we had an automaker approach us for a partnership that we weren't really prepared. It wasn't really our core business, but there was an opportunity there to do more than what they wanted us to do. We had no idea how to price it, because it wasn't even our product that we were selling. And so I think I had like 12 people that week to try and get all these data points on, and how do you work with a large company? What are they going to be expecting? What do you think their marketing budget is? And not one person was right? Not one person gave me the exact information I needed. I had to synthesize all that information coming in, and process it and take it to the team and just really stew over it. So no one's going to be giving you a silver bullet. Like, the silver bullet comes from you after taking the inputs and creating the best output. And if it's not the best output, you take a step back and you either pivot or adjust and tweak, and it's just rinse and repeat all day long.
Awesome. Thank you both for tackling that one. I kind of saved this part for the pitch competition. So I know you both have found success in kind of the pitch competitions to fund part of your startup journey. Kevin, you won the $10,000 first place prize at Pitch Elk Grove. And then, Startup Weekend was kind of the first inkling of that, although there was no cash awards. Maybe there was some in-kind components to it, but was definitely key. And then Ray, you won the King's Capitalize as well as our Spark Venture competition back in 2020. And so we'll start with you, Ray, on this one. Would love for you to share just a little bit about these competitions. How did you prepare for them? Is this something that was in your roadmap as a founding team, that we're going to use pitch competitions to help fund certain elements of our business? What did that look like to you, and how did you kind of plan on tapping in? And then we'll go to you, Kevin, after.
Yeah, so we didn't start off winning these competitions. Like, we failed at these a ton, and we did things like 1 million cups. We lost one with StartupSac. The first 2 times we applied to capitalize, we didn't get in. We got in on the 3rd time, even though we had a fair amount of traction. So it started off with a ton of failures. When we got into launch, it was pitching in front of investors every single week, and we had to be on point. And it took an incredible amount of practice and taking as many words off slides as possible, and truly crafting a narrative and getting to it really quickly and making it understandable to the audience. And my co-founder and I would just practice over and over and over again. And I think we were with 7 companies in launch, and we got first place out of 16 pitches. So we're just failing and failing and failing. And then with Spark, we got in, and we had already kind of tailored our pitch. It was pretty concise. We won that one. And then with Capitalize, it was the same thing, but we prepare for it every time. We're pitching that pitch 20 or 30 times before we go on stage and do it in front of people. We're getting feedback, we're doing it in front of each other. And then something that I missed early on was, like, we would get the pitch down, but we wouldn't practice answering questions from the judges. So we'd have a really good pitch, they'd ask us questions, and we would look kind of foolish. So practicing answering the questions from the judges was really important for us. And it took a ton of failures and falling on our face multiple times in public settings to actually get to a spot where we're able to win them.
Love it. Well, so yeah, I think thanks for sharing that you didn't succeed many of the times. I know that was probably not an easy thing to get those rejections, but a lot of times people see, oh yeah, they won, 3 in a row, but they didn't realize you were rejected, 5 times before that. So appreciate you sharing that. And then before we hop to Kevin, there was one thing I wanted to maybe have you dive in deeper on. And I think it's really crucial, was that you hadn't practiced the Q&A around what the judges, and I'm curious of kind of what that impact was on you building your business and the overall business model, since I imagine you were questioning each other. Were there ever times, like, key insights that you gained by, we don't have a question or answer to this question, maybe we need to dive into our business in a different way? So I'd be curious if there was any impact in that.
Yeah, for sure. And in launch, everything was recorded. So we would take all the questions, write them down, find the best answers, practice them consistently, go to VCs, see how they responded to how we answered their questions and tweak it. And I think it's important to make your answers about success and growth. And it took a lot of practice, but we wrote down every question that they asked us in launch, and we wrote out a few different answers, and we picked the best ones, and we just tried them and saw how people responded when we answered them. So
awesome. Thank you for diving in on that, Ray. And how about yourself, Kevin? Did you have similar experiences with trying to apply to these competitions before, and kind of what did that help you do as a founder and getting your business up and going?
Yeah, there's usually two phases of these competitions. The one is the application phase, and then one is the presentation and the pitch and all the Q&A, all the live stuff or the Zoom stuff. Fortunately, after 3 years, we've applied to enough accelerators, and we've filled out enough RFPs from different potential partners that we have kind of a greatest hits library of answers to, everyone's asking kind of the same questions. The toughest part is dealing with the different character or word counts between different applications, because you might have a beautiful answer for one application, and then the other application only wants a third of those characters. And so you have to literally just copy edit yourself down to nothing. And so the application processes at this point aren't that over the top. They're fairly easy for us because, again, we have prior work that we can draw from. But once you make it from the application into the first round, you then have to work on the pitch. And I've always, the competitions are never something that, it's not like a massive target of ours. Like we don't have goals of winning competitions, but the competitions present themselves. We look at them, we feel like we're in line to compete. And then at the same time, I typically look at them as an opportunity to focus and an opportunity to really craft my message. A lot of the times as a founder, I'm pulled away from thinking about who we are and what we're doing, what our vision is. And I'm into tedious stuff. I'm into contracts. I'm into code. I'm into very low level things. And it's really helpful to pull yourself out of that and spend a lot of time refining your story, refining your vision, refining your message, refining your visuals that you have on the screen. And all the competitions that Kings Capitalize, the Elk Grove competition. There's another one in San Diego, which we just got back from. They've all been, we've used the refined story after the competition. Like we gain more from the competition, I think, than the prize money, because we now have a better story, a better vision of who we are, because we took the time to really think about it hard.
Love it. A couple of things that I pulled from that, Kevin, was one, I love the greatest hits library. I think that's a good little trick to document all your applications, whether that's actually for pitch competitions or other RFPs that you might be going for. One will help the process, but also helps you kind of document the changes in the language and the way you talk about your business. So I think that's a really valuable practical takeaway. And then just, I like the point of, obviously, the competitions, there's the incentive of the cash award and the visibility that comes from it, but that intention to go through that process and be visible in that way, you have to refine your message, and that kind of dedicated time to be focusing on your pitch and maybe the less nitty gritty of doing contracts and actually looking at that larger vision of you as a business and how you're going to be telling that story. So for those of you that are looking at pitch competitions, obviously there's a great way to bring on some early resources, but it's also a great way to have intentional time to refine your story and really build what your narrative is around starting your business. So Awesome. So just a note for everyone, I have about 2 questions left, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. This next one, just wanted to have Ray share a little bit. I know you just started with the Growth Factory, but would be curious and you can also tap into your experience in launch, but what those kind of accelerator programs look like, and what like a startup might get out of that experience, and why you maybe chose at these different times to go through those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, for Growth Factory, just big shout out to Monique, Rick, Mark Haney. It's been historically hard to raise capital from Sacramento, and they take a very unique hands-on approach where they're looking at your startup and finding areas that they can help in and really diving into those areas. So we appreciate them for that. It's a little different than launch. Launch was very pitch heavy. They helped us craft our narrative and pitch. They put us in front of investors every single week. But it helped out a lot. Like if we didn't get into launch, it probably would have been harder to raise money from Mucker. Just having that logo, having somebody like Jason Calacanis backing us, it helps other investors de-risk the investment and be comfortable with making that investment. And then there's a ton of them. Like I really encourage first-time founders, especially, to get in some type of accelerator, get to know the ecosystem. And the ones that we've been through have been extremely, extremely helpful. So, and big shout out again to Growth Factory. We're really excited about being a part of the cohort this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Ray, for sharing that. Kevin, I know you've tapped into things like you mentioned Clean Start and the CEO Crash Course. I know they're not maybe a traditional type of accelerator, but are there any of those types of programs that you've gone through that you might want to like speak to, just to, whether that was growing as a CEO or co-CEO and helping you kind of on that journey?
Yeah, traditional accelerators, no, we haven't participated in traditional accelerators. We've tried, but we failed at those. But we do have the greatest hits library of the responses. It's you never know. The accelerators typically have a theme that they want to hit, or they have a type of company, they have a type of vertical, they have just a type of business model that they want to hit. And so I try really hard not to take it personally when we don't get into something, or we apply for something that doesn't work out. But one thing I will say, something that everybody can do for free, that is kind of like a pre-accelerator, is something called, it's Y Combinator. It's called Startup School. And it's not their accelerator, but it is, I don't even know what they would consider it, but it is the first thing that you can do it's free. I think everybody gets in, and it puts you in front of different founders, and it gives you goals every week, and you have time, you have office hours with other founders, and you have goals that you try and hit, and you provide feedback to the system, to YC, just to try and keep yourself honest and get you into that mindset of constant growth, constant customer conversations, constant iteration. So yeah.
Love it. Yeah, no, that's a great resource. The Y Combinator. I think Startup School, is that the name of it?
Startup School, yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And I like it. I think just having that kind of accountability to work on something each week and move your business forward. All right. Well, the last main question before I do kind of a conclusion one, would love to just get both of your insights into kind of fundraising. I know certainly sometimes it's hard to raise funds. One, just in general, but also in Sacramento sometimes has been a challenging place to do that. So would love for you to share a little bit of if there's any advice in the fundraising journey, whether there's tips and tricks or pains you've experienced as you've gone through that you might be able to support a founder that's thinking of starting to raise capital. And I'll kick it off to Kevin first, and then we'll go to you, Ray.
Yeah, so we're actively fundraising right now. This is our first time. We bootstrapped up until now with sweat equity plus some of the annual revenue that we have from some of the partner contracts that we've been able to secure. But now's the time. We need to go faster. We need to hire. We need to do more. So we are actively raising. We are we're raising for a pre-seed round. So I think the first step is we've been in front of a lot of people that don't invest in pre-seed. So I think we could be, on the one hand, we could be smart about who we're talking to. On the other hand, every pitch is an opportunity to improve. Every pitch is a networking event where you might not be good for them now because they invest later, but you hopefully will get to that stage, and then you'll have a connection, and you can show them the growth from where you were from your original conversation. But it's a numbers game. I think it's just a quantity that you're not going to be perfect the first time out. Your deck's not going to be perfect. People are going to give you feedback. The worst feedback, the easiest feedback to digest is the worst feedback, because it's too soft. It doesn't get you anywhere. We recently had a friend who is in venture. So we weren't pitching to her, but she gave us really harsh, brutally honest feedback. It's kind of the same as with customers. You don't want a customer to tell you that they kind of like your product, because they're not gonna love you. They're not gonna shout you from the rooftop. You want them to either absolutely love you so they can promote you, or you want them to hate you so that you can learn about how you can improve. What needs of theirs are you not addressing? Same thing for the investor, or for the feedback that you get. It was really a bummer to a month into our fundraising, a month into our road show, our Zoom show, to get this really harsh feedback about how terrible our deck was. And we met last Monday, my co-founder and I, Peter, and literally spent the entire week. It was a grueling week, just back in PowerPoint or Google Slides, reimagining our story, rethinking, like Ray said earlier, what words need to be here, what words don't. It literally comes down to character count and word count on a screen. VCs don't. We have a data room now, and we can track how long somebody spends in our deck, and no one's spending more than 3 minutes in our deck reviewing us before they tell us if they want to call or not. So you have a very short window. So be terse, be concise, take the feedback. And then one thing that's been really helpful for us is, even if it's a pass or even if it's a not right now, asking the follow-up question at the very end: is there anybody else who you think might appreciate the work we're doing and the vision we have? And that has led to a handful of introductions from one person. Sometimes we'll literally get lists of people, and they tell us, well, just let me know who you want to. I think everybody wants everyone to succeed. You just might not be a match for that person that you're talking to, but that doesn't mean they hate you and they want you to fail. And so they have a network. Try and tap that network. And then all of a sudden you have 10 meetings planned, and those 10 meetings planned just grow exponentially. And so we're just continuing to talk as much as we can to as many people as we can, find as many network connections as we can, and continue refining the deck like we are, and our pitch like we continue to refine our product.
Thank you, Kevin. There's 3 quick points I'm going to pull out of that. One was certainly, even if it's a no, is kind of having that, is there anybody else that might be a fit, right? So there's that learning process, even just pitching and getting that first meeting. There might be another opportunity with someone down the line, and having, the courage to ask that question at the end, even though it might be a no for next meeting with them. Looking for that feedback, and whether that be they absolutely love you or they hate you. Those feedbacks are obviously key, not the lukewarm one. And then lastly, I thought it was really insightful on the data room, and really tracking that information and data to see what that engagement looks like, and being able to see if there's any tick up or tick down in the time that people are engaging in that information. So thanks for sharing.
And by the way, just in full honesty, I didn't even know what a data room was prior to 2 months ago. It's kind of a fancy word for a folder. And there are a folder where you put like more intimate documents, like your revenue model, maybe some contracts to show that you have signed. You're not going to show it to everyone, but people that are serious. And there's some nice services out there. One of them that we use is called DocSend, and that's what gives us the tracking ability to see when somebody, you have to log in to see it, and so we can tell who logged in and how much time they spent in each doc. So anyways, just kind of a pro tip that I just learned myself.
Yeah, no, thanks for showing it. Not everyone knows what a data room is. And yeah, that's great. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. Awesome. Off to you, Ray.
Yeah, Kevin, I think you made a good point about just talking to as many VCs as possible. And you can read online, like, you shouldn't talk to VCs that aren't in your sector or your stage. It was really interesting when we're going through launch. Michael did a pitch, and he got introduced to a VC in Santa Monica that invested in like the music business. And I reached out to them when we're raising our seed round. They told me, hey, this isn't going to be a good fit. I don't know if the meeting's worth it. I challenged them a little bit. We got on the call. It obviously wasn't a fit for either of us. And at the end of the call, always try and ask one question. I'll ask, I'm not asking for a direct referral to any VCs, but is there anyone you think that we should talk to that might find this interesting? And he's like, oh yeah, Mucker Capital. Let me send you an intro. He introed us to Mucker Capital. And within 2 weeks, we closed out the seed round. So I think that's a really good point, Kevin. You might, it might be a wasted meeting, but it might get you an intro path to an amazing VC that will do the investment. I think this year is a lot different than last year. VCs are writing big checks on pre-revenue products. And now it's really important to focus on North Star metrics, not vanity metrics, like real metrics that move the needle. For us, it was revenue early on and growth month over month. And other type of companies, it's going to be a different metric, but find that North Star metric and go after that religiously every single day and make sure you're tracking that up and to the right. For early entrepreneurs, like if you're doing your first startup, I'd recommend getting into a top tier accelerator like Launch or Growth Factory, and that will help you in your fundraising efforts. And then, the goal when you're raising money isn't to raise that money for growth. Like, I think you should really grow first, build a great product, build a great team, get it into the market, and then you want to raise money to accelerate growth. And then obviously figure out if you want to build a venture backable company. Like, you could bootstrap to millions of dollars and have a great outcome for yourself, for your co-founders, your employees. If you're going to build a venture backable company, it needs to be a very large market. You need to differentiate and you need to have signs of being a category leader within that market. But if you want to make a lot of money, you can bootstrap to that for sure. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that and sharing that story of actually asking, for a potential connection and how that led to you closing out your seed round. And then certainly, putting a pin in that, VC is not for everyone, especially, you really need to think of the type of business that you want to build. And if you can bootstrap, certainly do that as long as you can. Kevin just even sharing that he's now just starting to raise his, first round and has been bootstrapping to this point. So great example for that. So my last question to both of you before we turn it over to Q&A. So start getting your questions ready. You can throw them in chat or use the raise hand feature and I'll help bring that in. But the last questions I have, and this will be for both of you, if you just in terms of if an entrepreneur walking away from this, what piece of advice might you have for them as they start in their entrepreneurial journeys? And then what can this community do to support both of you in growing your ventures? So we'll start with Ray and then we'll go Kevin.
Yeah, I think most importantly, have fun on the journey. You should be putting joy into your work. And sometimes it's hard, it's stressful, things go wrong, but have fun. And then team is incredibly important. Don't try and do it alone. Build a team around you that can support you and lift you up and hopefully fill in some of your weaknesses. And that's been really, really helpful for us. Course correct and iterate quickly. And to do that, you need to get a product into the market really fast. Talk about your idea to as many people as possible. Go put it into a business or a consumer's hands and get that feedback and push it as quickly as possible. And then how you can support us is more events like this. They've been extremely helpful on our journey. So just being able to attend these type of events, the pitch events are really fun. They make you uncomfortable sometimes, but more events like this will be extremely helpful.
Cool. Love it. All righty. What about to you, Kevin?
Yeah, I agree with all that. The team is important. I think you want to find, and your co-founders especially, like you want to find co-founders that I like to think of us as concentric circles. Each of us can cross over into the other's territory a little bit, enough to have intelligent conversations, but there's definitely domain ownership. I think trust is really important too, because if it's a long journey, right? Ray, you're going on your 5th year, I think. And we just passed our 3rd. Oh, sorry. Is it 5?
3rd. Yeah.
You're going your 3rd? Oh, okay. So we're just past our 3rd. It's a long time. 3 years is a lot. And at any given point, it's pretty rare that all 3 of us are like at our peak. and are in peak enthusiasm and peak excitement and peak optimism. And typically one or two of us are up and one is a little bit down for whatever reason. Maybe they're stressing about the business, maybe they're stressing about life, other family stuff. And you really need to be each other's, you need to lift each other up, right? And you need to let that person, you need to have trust that the other person is going through something, but also will get out of it and hopefully will lift you up at some point. And so the team is really important. And finally, I think the big, it's not really a surprise, but the big lesson I've learned with EV Life in terms of the holistic journey is that if I'm doing a startup, my whole family's kind of doing a startup in a way, right? My wife's in it, my kids are in it. They see me working long hours. They see me coming out stressed. I work from home, so I don't have much of a commute to blow off any steam. And so I think it's just really important that if you have a partner, if you have a spouse, a partner, anyone that you come home to make sure that like they're on board as well, and that you're in constant communication with them, because they're living this journey through you, and you need their support just like you need everything else to run your business. That support is really critical. And so just, I guess, getting your home in order, making sure that's in order, checking in, communicating, making sure that doesn't add another stress to what is already a stressful journey.
Love it. And how can our community help you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'd say, the more of the events like Ray mentioned, these are always helpful. It's always just really nice, especially these days, to get out. And unfortunately, we couldn't get out tonight, but at least we have a really good turnout. And this is better than nothing. But being able to see people, being able to talk, being able to learn, and we are actively seeking investment. So if anybody knows of any investors that clean tech, fintech, locally, we got started locally. I was raised here in Folsom. I would love to have a local funding story as well. So we've talked to a couple of the local guys. We've applied to Sac Angels. So anything else outside of that, we'd love some introductions.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. And you both hit the nail on the head with team, and that team expands to, our family and surroundings as well. So I think that's a really key element. And Ray, we can certainly continue to put these on. We will have one next month as well. And there's 1 million cups every week and all those types of things. Kevin, as you're hitting the fundraising journey, certainly, if there's people in this space that can make those referrals and connections, that would be great. And I agree, getting a Sacramento fundraising, another success is always great for the ecosystem. So awesome. Well, we'll transition to the open Q&A, and thank you both for the conversation with me. So I will turn it over. It looks like Laura has the first hand raised, and then we'll go Dig VJ and Steve. So go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, so I'm curious about the pitch competitions, the ones that had the higher visibility, like both Pitch Elk Grove and King's Capitalize had stories in the Business Journal, and then the audience was fairly large. So I'm wondering if that PR was helpful at all, if it resulted in investors wanting to have discussions with you, or potential partners wanting to have discussions with you. And that's a question to both of you.
Yeah, I can start. I think we won the Elk Grove competition. I had some people from Elk Grove call me when they saw the published story in the Elk Grove local paper. So that was fun. In fact, this weekend, somebody, a friend, mentioned that he had seen a write-up in Sac Business Journal, which, so that kind of stuff is trickling in. I think the biggest impact in terms of how our story was amplified was from people we met at the competition, mostly the judges. There were some judges there that had ties to venture capital, and we've had follow-up discussions with them already and continue to kind of keep those conversations going. So that was really helpful for us. But in terms of Elk Grove, that specific event didn't really lead to outsiders that we hadn't met yet coming to us from winning that event.
Okay. How about you, Ray?
Yeah, for Capitalize It, we just think about exposure, and Douglas Younger shared our social media before and after, and it went up exponentially by over 1,000% and almost got like 1 million hits on social media. So we got great exposure there. We met amazing people, and at the Elk Grove pitch competition, we got an intro to an investor that we had met with earlier, and we're meeting with them next week. And then I think it's been really helpful in recruiting as we're scaling out the team, and they're seeing news articles and seeing that we're winning competitions. It builds the trust in the company, and then internally it kind of fires everybody up, and they think it's really cool. And it's like Kevin said earlier, it's a chance for us to kind of step back, look at the business from a 30,000-foot view, and it's been a great journey. And both the pitch competitions were really impactful for us.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Digvijay.
Digvijay. Hi, my name is Digvijay Singh, and I just moved to Sacramento. I have a company. I'm founded a company called CarLife, and I am also the CTO for another company called ShareShare, where I'm a lateral hire. And I'm curious to know from you that how, like, while we're just starting out with pre-revenue, how do you get the word out when you're really small and you have no money? Like, what was your experience? Do you use any specific channels? Basically, how did you get your initial word out?
For us, we literally just walked into 30 businesses per day with the iPads and showed it to them and got people to buy it. And then my co-founder and I, we started just picking up the phone, and we call 50 to 100 businesses every single day for the first year.
Worst tuna melt ever. I'm so
we just pushed it into the market ourselves, and we had a background in sales. That's what we did for years, so we were comfortable doing it. But it was a grind early on, and it was founder-led sales.
Yeah, for us, we were looking for consumers online. Those were going to be those are our customers. People searching. So SEO is really important for us right from the beginning. Of course, and once we had something to show, our MVP, the friends and family were the first ones we went to. And then from there, LinkedIn was a good source for us to amplify what we were doing. Twitter and Facebook, I think, have been okay, but LinkedIn for us has been key to getting in front of as many people as possible. And also not just maybe customers, but potential partners and other people that we're going to be needing to integrate with. That's been really valuable for us. Other business professionals that we need to attract to do work with. But really, early stage, it was really just SEO and LinkedIn. I think that was our biggest strategy.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I be heard?
Yep, Steve, you're up.
Okay, I wrote it down, and I'm sorry that I'm having issues today with this, with my Zoom. Anyway, I wanted to know from both of your perspectives, how do you define what you represent to go to market? And I'm saying this specifically in your brand recognition and how you really determine what your true, what I would say value would be in terms of what people buy. Because one of the things that I think for startups, even their pitches and their Shark Tank type pitches, is the investors, or even let's say customers, let's say the marketplace, they really want to know, what is it that you're selling, okay? And how have you clearly defined that so that I know that, hey, if I'm investing in you, I'm going to make some money, or if I want to buy your product because I think it's unique or whatever, is it clear? Have you really defined it? And is it something that, people really will be able to understand quickly? Did you hear that?
Yeah. I can start out. Are you talking about product market fit or go to market?
I'm talking go to market and I'm really talking from a brand perspective. I've looked at both of your websites. and I don't want to be critical or anything on this at all, but I'm really curious in terms of your sales, because I'm assuming the sales are there. But the question I have in terms of go to market, is it really defined that people really get it and they really, either see it as something that they gotta have? And I look at that, and from my experience, as something that could be undeniable to them. And how are you really showing that in terms of your foundation and your growth? I have some confusion on one in particular, and I want to hear what you have to say before I say anything. And I'm not here to be critical or anything, but I really want to know just what that, how are you doing that? How are you representing
that? So we ran a pilot with our loan product in Q1 here in California. We raised a small fund from friends and family and created an SPV and issued loans out of that SPV. And hold on one sec. And the go-to-market strategy that we had for that product in terms of how we were going to get in front of people, what ended up being really effective. We were able to drive signups that grew our signup list in the direction that we needed it to go. We were able to sell through the loan volume that we had. And we envision a similar go-to-market once we learned a lot from that pilot. We are pivoting in terms of how the product is, how the financial product works. We've adjusted that, and we are now raising money and raising another fund to be able to create loans out of. And that is our goal now, is for the end of the summer to be able to start issuing new loans. But from what we learned from the first go-to-market strategy in our pilot, there's a lot that we can replicate, and we believe we'll be successful at replicating when we have the new product in the spot where we can start selling it again. So right now we don't have sales because we are gearing up we're kind of reimagining the entire how the product works and getting everything to the point where we can issue that new product.
So is that based on what you're saying now? It sounds like you have sold some things, but I guess the question I have, and this is just me being, in doing what I do, how is your brand being recognized based on it? Or is it maybe even not in that level? And that could be because you're just starting out and you haven't gotten to that point. But I know in a lot of acceptance, I'll just use that word, for small companies that I believe could have a lot of potential, you really need to define your name. It has to be clear. It has to really make sense in all facets, or in all the assets that you're representing. And I'm just curious about how that actually is being recognized in your formation and in your foundation currently. Because if there's any kind of confusion in terms of, what you're representing as far as what you're selling, and then the name of your business and how you're defining your business, all those things are connected. And I'm just curious. And to me, sometimes if you can really net that and really be clear on that, it'll really help you with all your sales and everything that you're trying to do. And I think it may not take you as long if you really started to focus on that.
Yeah, I think the way we think about it, we feel like our name is pretty kind of on the nose with what we're doing with electric vehicle life, like helping people transition to that lifestyle where they're driving electric vehicles. If anything, we're considering what the future holds for us as we move from the car into the entire home. And does that brand EV Life hold up when we're talking about the entire home? But that's something that's on the back burner. Like, we've pinned that. That's something for later. That's not our biggest issue right now. Our biggest issue is getting EV loans out into the market. And for that, I think our brand is well positioned to sell that vision of electric vehicle lifestyle.
Okay.
Very, very good. AZ, I think you had the next question.
Well, I didn't hear from The eye care.
Yeah,
It's not eye care. Irate.
That was one of my confusions too.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Thanks for the question, Steve. So we're selling directly to the businesses, and a lot of these businesses are pissed off from their ratings. There's some review companies that really make them mad. Low-wage employees are mad that they don't make a ton of money, and we want to get more eyes on their ratings. So the message is very concise, and it resonates with the business owners, and that's why we're able to grow 20% month over month for the last 3 years and raise some money from top-tier investors. So it really resonates with the business owners, with their employees, and then with the investors that we raise the capital from. Thank you for the question.
Okay.
Thank you, Ray and Kevin, for tackling that one. All righty, AZ, you got the next question.
Cool. This question was particularly for Ray. I think he spoke to like a near-death experience, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I think when thinking about near-death experiences, I think this question is a little bit more around the internal team of like when that happens as kind of the leader of the team, how do you kind of settle the chaos and make sure everyone can kind of stay calm and then make sure you guys are going to make the right pivot and, you know, go into a different market segment or pivot in the business overall?
Yeah, really, really good question. Our founding team was really close. There's 4 of us that grew up together, and we all share a similar mindset. Like, we're going to make it work. We're very lucky individuals. So no matter what happens, we know something great is on the other side of that. So it wasn't, I don't know, we weren't really worried about it. We looked at it like an opportunity. We put our heads down. We found new industries to sell into. We brought new people onto the team. We built new products, and we were somehow weirdly excited about it. So I hope that answers your question.
Weirdly excited. That's awesome. Thank you.
Love that. Laura, looks like you have the next hand raised.
I have my hand up. I'm trying to remember what my question was. Actually, I'm curious, what are you guys doing to ensure that you have an intentional company culture? And do you think that's important? And I'll ask Ray first.
Yeah, I think it's really important. It's easier when there's 4 or 5 people in a garage. It's hard when it's 30 or 40 people. I think it starts with mission, vision, core values. Choose 3 to 5 core values that you repeat in every single meeting. And then something we're working on is like our culture principles, like, you know, maybe 10 of them where you're writing out what the culture is. You share that with the whole team, and it's just a way that you operate when people are not looking at you, right? You have remote employees, you want them to own that culture, you want to make sure that they embody it. And it's important if somebody's not a cultural fit or a cultural add to the team and they're subtracting, it's important to part ways with them fairly quickly. But mission, vision, core values, culture principle, that's how we do it.
And Kevin, I'm going to hold off on you a little bit because you're just 3 guys right now, right? Is that about right? And Ray,
yeah, contractors, yeah, we do think about it, and we do factor it into how, you know, we structure time off, how the expectations, you know, the holidays that we take and that we don't take, the you know, trying to create a culture of inclusivity, right? Even if it's just two or 3 of us with some contractors, we still want to come off as inclusive, and we want to come off as communicative, and where the expectations about how we communicate with each other are set from the top and are consistent throughout, the respect that we have for each other. So there are things that we do just as a very small team, but we haven't really been able to, we're not at the point yet where we get to kind of spread those to other people yet.
And Ray, how did you even become aware that those were important things? Are you working with an HR service? How did that come up?
Just doing research, reading about startups, watching YouTube videos, and then our own experience going from 5 to 35 people. It's, you know, you gotta really find people that fit the culture and then add to the culture. So just experience and doing research and talking about it constantly.
Have you had to let anyone go because they weren't a culture fit, if you feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah. And sometimes we would let it go for too long, and that's a failure on our end. So we try and address it quickly. And yeah, we've had to before.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, almost every single company lets it go too long because it's such a, you want to give the person the benefit of the doubt, you know? So, okay. So, yeah. So the other question I have, do you have any specific hiring policies where you're trying to be more diverse and inclusive? Or do you think it's time yet?
Yeah. I mean, for us, for sure, we constantly try and be diverse and inclusive. And when we go through the hiring process, we want to look at 5 to 10 candidates for every spot that we're going to fill. And our goal is to build a very diverse team. And I think we've done a fair job at it so far, and we'll continue improving as time goes on.
Great. Thank you.
I did do a selfish plug as we were talking about building company culture. We have a workshop coming up in the middle of July with the author of Building Great Mondays. And it's a culture development workshop for setting your core values, vision, and mission. So I did have to do the shameless plug there, but looks like May has the next question. So take it away.
Hi. So you mentioned earlier that, sometimes things fail and you have to pivot, but then also that sometimes you're going to get a lot of feedback from many different people and they might not agree with what you're saying. So I guess at what point, do you realize that maybe what you think is wrong versus, you should continue to pursue what you want to pursue, and that maybe we shouldn't always listen to other people's opinion?
That's a really good question. So essentially you're asking, how do you take people's advice, but not take everyone's advice? How do you figure out what advice to take and what advice just to absorb and to maybe pass on? I think for me, and it's not necessarily just for pivots. It could be any decision, or like, hey, let's throw our deck away and start over. Like, that's not really a pivot. It's like, we just have to do better. And let's invest that time. I think for me, the advice I end up taking, or our decision to go that route, or to start over on the pitch deck, using that as an example, I think we kind of knew. I think they kind of told us stuff that we didn't want to start over. We were being lazy, and they gave us feedback that resonated with what we kind of already knew. And so I think listening to yourself, you might not always have the confidence to trust what you're thinking, but when someone else comes along and validates it, it makes it a lot easier. So trusting yourself, listening to yourself, and using that as a factor and how to take somebody's feedback. And then also, I think looking at trends, if one person says something, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But if you're hearing the same type of message, if you're hearing the exact same thing, then you kind of know that you have something that's not right. Your customers are telling you, or your investors are telling you something, and they're telling it to you over and over, and multiple people are telling you that haven't talked to each other. So they know something that you don't, and that you haven't addressed yet. So it behooves you to maybe think about that a little harder.
It's a good point too, about like, if the customers or investors or your colleagues are giving you feedback and they have skin in the game, it's very different than some random person that you met at a coffee bar that's trying to give you feedback and tell you how to run the company. So I think it's, do they have skin in the game? Have they done it before? What is the feedback that they're giving? And for us, it was a process of iteration and taking people's feedback that didn't have skin in the game and trying things and seeing that fail, and realizing you got to be really selective with what feedback you focus on.
And I wanted to add something to that discussion. I often hear from early stage founders when they're first doing, first pitching to investors. They get very frustrated because 3 different investors will tell them 3 very different things, and they can't appease all of them, and what should they do? And it's your business. So those people, yeah, I liked what Kevin said, that you can kind of weigh it based on trends that you're hearing, but investors aren't always right. But sometimes they talk to you with an attitude of course they're right, because they're an investor, and they may not be the right investor for your company. So at the end of the day, it's your company, your vision, and it's good to be coachable and to listen to these things, but you're the one who's going to make the final decision, and that's the way it should be. Otherwise, you aren't cut out to be a founder of a startup. My 2 cents.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ray or Kevin? Got a little bit of time left. Laura, did you re-raise your hand, or is it? All right.
I think I lowered, you lowered, I think we both tried to lower my hand at the same time, and it ended up getting.
And we raised it. There we go. Very good. Well, I think if there's no other last questions, we'll go giving it once, twice, 3 times. Well, with that, Laura will wrap us up, but I just want to say, Ray and Kevin, thank you for the conversation. I really enjoyed learning more about both of your ventures and the startup journey, and just your perspective of building your ventures, and wish you both the success that you deserve, and know the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem is here to support you, and don't hesitate to reach out to me, certainly, but hopefully continue to lean on the ecosystem here. But appreciate you spending the time and giving back to entrepreneurs that are coming up behind you as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Laura, and we can give you those virtual round of applause and the hand wave. So thanks again for the time. So I will remove the spotlight. You are out of the spotlight. You're almost out of the spotlight, Ray. And there you go. Laura, take us away.